everyone, welcome back to the latest video in this series on the DDHQ YouTube channel. I'm Liberty Vittert, the Senior Data Scientist here at DDHQ. So going forward in these polling update videos, we're going to start including Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for all the states in which he is claimed to have secured ballot access, and where have a three-way average between Kennedy, Biden, and Trump available. As always, we're going to explore the landscape of the 2024 Electoral College map, drawing on the most recent polling data from the Decision Desk HQ and The Hill. For a more in-depth comparison, be sure to review our previous analysis available on our channel, and also make sure to visit elections2024.thehill.com, which is accessible via the first link in this video's description below. So a state has to have at least 5 qualifying polls to be included in our polling averages for both the head-to-head contests and the three-way races. We now have polling averages for 17 states, and today we'll focus on these states, while others have been categorized based on the 2020 presidential election results. States decided by over 12 points are safe, by 7 to 12 points likely, and by 2 to 7 points lean. States with polling margins under 2% will remain in the toss-up category. As you can see here, with all of the states in which we currently have an average available, marked down as toss-ups for now, incumbent Democratic President Joe Biden holds a preliminary lead over Donald Trump with 135 electoral votes to the former Republican president's 115. 270 electoral votes are, of course, required to win the presidential election. So let's get into these states. We'll follow the order of the states by their competitiveness, starting with those least competitive and saving the 6 crucial battleground states for last. That leads us to start with a brand new average in Tennessee. The volunteer state won't be competitive this year, but we do have 7 polls surveying the head-to-head contest between Trump and Biden here, with Trump leading by a whopping average of 27% based upon 7 polls. Trump has led by 30 or more points in 3 of the last 5 polls taken here, so this obviously means that Tennessee goes down as a safe Republican state on this map. Over on the West Coast, we have another equally uncompetitive state, this time on the Democrat side. California has gone blue in 8 straight elections and by margins greater than 20 points in each of the last 4. But as the most populous state in the nation, with the largest electoral college count up for grabs, there has been more than enough pollster attention for us to have generated an average. Biden leads Trump by 21 points based on 21 polls. To no one's surprise, California joins Tennessee as a safe state, but this time for Biden. Moving along, we have Ohio now. The Buckeye State voted for Obama in 2008 and 2012 before shifting very hard in favor of Trump in the 2016 election and staying firmly in his column in 2020. The polling averages here still has Trump leading by 11 points based on 10 polls, since no new polls have been added since mid-March. Trump has led by double digits in 6 consecutive polls taken in Ohio, a worrying sign for the Democratic Party's already slim odds at holding control of the U.S. Senate. With the presidential race effectively a foregone conclusion, Democratic incumbent Senator Sherrod Brown will in all likelihood need to outrun Biden by a very wide margin to be elected to a 3rd term this November. Back on the presidential electoral college map, Ohio goes in the likely Republican column. Now we're going to shift all the way down to Florida, the Sunshine State, which has been decided by a margin of less than 6 points in 8 consecutive presidential elections, the longest active streak of any state. This consistent pattern has essentially made Florida synonymous with the term swing state on election nights across recent years. Democrats spent more money on Florida than any other state in the 2016 and 2020 election cycles, but that certainly won't be the case here in 2024 after Trump carried it by 3.4% in 2020, marking it as one of the only 8 states where he improved his performance compared to 2016. Further emphasizing the state's Republican swing, incumbent Governor Ron DeSantis and Senator Marco Rubio were reelected in 2022 by substantial margins of 19 and 16 points, respectively. respectively. While Trump is unlikely to reach those level of margins, he certainly appears on pace to win in Florida by the largest margin for a presidential candidate in decades. We've added 3 new polls to our average since our last update, decreasing Trump's lead from 12.9% to 10.4%, now based on 12 polls. This comes as 2 of the last 3 polls had the Republican leading by single digits, after he had led by more than 10 points in 3 of the previous 4. Nevertheless, that 10-point overall lead for Trump translates to a likely Republican margin in Florida over on the electoral map, down from safe Republican previously. So jumping back to the Midwest and Iowa, similar story to Ohio here. After voting for Obama twice, it became a reliably Republican state in the Trump era, backing him by margins of 8 to 9 points in both 2016 and 2020. Interestingly here, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has claimed to have ballot access in Iowa, but unfortunately we don't have enough polls assessing the full field here, so we'll just have to resort to the Biden versus Trump average, which has remained unchanged since early February. Trump leads Biden by 9.5 points based on 8 polls. Again, it translates to a likely Republican race rating. Back down in Texas, no new polls here since mid-March. Trump's lead remains 8.7% now, based on a total of 9 polls. So Trump continues to hold an average of 51.9% to Biden's 43.2%. So back over to the Electoral College, Texas also goes down as likely Trump. Next on the list is one of our newest averages in Colorado, which outpaced the national trend towards Democrats by the most of any state between 2016 and 2020, backing Biden by 13.5 points. The incumbent president continues to lead in our polling average here, as no new polls have been added since we first debuted the average 2 weeks ago. Biden leads by 7.8% based upon 8 polls. Biden has led in all 8 of those polls by at least 4 percentage points. So over on the map, Colorado becomes our first and only likely Biden state. Up in the Northeast now, we still haven't seen a poll in the Biden versus Trump average in New Hampshire since mid-January, as Biden continues to lead by 6.2% based upon 8 polls. New Hampshire is one of the 8 states in which the Kennedy campaign has claimed ballot access, but there isn't enough polling data yet to have generated a full average. The Granite State has voted Republican just once over the last 8 presidential elections, though it has consistently been the most competitive state in New England during that time span. Nonetheless, it continues to lean towards Biden. In the Commonwealth of Virginia now, no new polls again this week, as Biden's lead remains at 4.7% based upon 12 polls. The incumbent president carried Virginia's 13 electoral votes by 10 points in 2020, the largest margin for a Democrat in this formerly reliable Republican state since 1944. It, just like New Hampshire, goes down as lean Democrat. So does the state of Minnesota, another average 2 weeks ago, showing Biden with a less than comfortable advantage. After initially leading Trump by 5.5 points, a new poll released by Survey USA shows Biden leading by just 2 points, which decreased the overall margin to 4.1% based on 8 polls. The incumbent Democratic president holds an average of 44.6% across these surveys, compared to Trump's at 40.5%. Minnesota notably holds the longest active streak of consistently voting Democratic in presidential elections. It hasn't backed a Republican candidate since Richard Nixon in 1972. Trump came within 1.5 points of breaking that streak in 2016, just as he came within 1.5 points of New Hampshire in that election, before Biden swung both states back comfortably into the Democratic column by more than 7 points each in 2020. Minnesota also goes down as a lean Democrat state. North Carolina is next, a perennially purple state that has been decided by less than 5 percentage points in 4 straight presidential elections. Republicans have won each of the last 3. It is a state that Trump will absolutely need to hold in 2024 if he's to take back the White House, as any further losses to his 2020 coalition would be detrimental to his chances of reaching 270. So far, Trump has consistently looked very strong in the Tar Heel state, though once again his average lead over Biden and their head-to-head average has decreased now down to just 3.9% from 5.1% in our last update. Remember, Trump led in early March by as much as 10.5 points, so this marks a pretty substantial drop. That being said, the RFK Jr. campaign has claimed ballot access in North Carolina, and we do in fact have a horse race average available to us here in which Trump's lead marginally increases to 4.1% based on 17 polls. Trump holds 43.3% here to Biden's 39.2%, with Kennedy Jr. pulling in an average of 9.1%. Using the overall average of 4.1%, though, North Carolina will go down as lean Republican. This leaves us with the 6 states that are considered to be the most essential battlegrounds in 2024. All 6 were decided by less than 3 points in the last election, and with the exception of Nevada, they all backed Trump in 2016 before flipping to Biden in 2020. Taking a quick look at the race to 270, Trump leads with 235 electoral votes to Biden's 226. If all of the other averages in the 11 less competitive states we've gone over already hold steady, Joe Biden would at minimum have to carry at least 3 out of these 6 states to hit 270. But if he loses Pennsylvania, that number would increase to 4. Meanwhile, Trump could hit 270 with wins in just Pennsylvania and Georgia, or by carrying any of these 3 except Nevada. And on that note, Trump's largest margin of lead in any of these states is actually in Nevada right now. RFK Jr. has claimed ballot access in Nevada, and our current horse race average shows Trump leading by 6 points in a full field contest based on 11 polls. The former president is averaging 40.7% to Biden's 34.7%, with Kennedy Jr. trailing behind at 10.6%. This is interesting, as if we take a look at the average assessing just the head-to-head contest between Biden and Trump, the Republicans' lead is just 4.4%, suggesting that Kennedy Jr. is at least currently pulling more support away from Biden in Nevada than from Trump. Of course, it remains to be seen whether the Kennedy campaign can keep up his current level of support, as historically speaking, non-major party bids have tended to fade in prominence down the stretch run of the presidential election cycles. Still, though, this is something to monitor as we mark Nevada down as leaning Republican. Trump's next largest margin of lead in any of these states is in Georgia. Trump leads Biden by an average of 4.6% based on 29 polls. That's up from his 3.9% lead in our last update, the first time that Trump's margin has increased in an update since January. It had previously been consistently narrowing since peaking at nearly 10 points at the start of this year. This change comes off the back of the latest poll from Beacon Research showing Trump leading by 6 points among 1,100 registered voters. This means that Georgia joins Nevada as a lean Republican state. Next, we'll head to Arizona, where his advantage over Biden sits at 4.4%, a marginal increase from 4.2% in our last update. This latest average is based on 35 polls, with 3 new ones being added to the average over the last 2 weeks, ranging from Trump plus 3 up to Trump plus 6. Trump's average lead has remained hovering between 3 to 6 points since last November. Arizona has featured one of the most consistent polling average graphs so far this cycle, so going back to the map, we'll label Arizona as lean Republican. Keep in mind that beginning with Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1952 and ending with Trump in 2016, Republican presidential candidates have carried Arizona in 16 out of the 17 presidential elections. However, their dominance began to be challenged at the start of the 21st century, and over the last 24 years, Arizona has rapidly trended toward the political center in American politics, driven really by the Republican Party's eroding support among college-educated white voters and rising turnout from Latinos and Native Americans, and the explosive population and growth and diversification of Phoenix, the fastest growing metro area in the entire country. This leaves us with the Upper Rust Belt trio, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The trio has traditionally been considered part of the Blue Wall, but Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania broke away from Minnesota in 2016, each backing Trump by less than a point over Hillary Clinton, before then flipping back in favor of Biden by less than 3 points each in 2020. Had Trump carried them in 2020, he would be serving a second term right now. So these states are considered ancestrally Democratic due to that strong white working class presence that had previously made up the backbone for the Democratic electorate for most of the late 20th century. They had voted Democratic in 6 straight elections between 1988 to 2016. Trump's emerging strength among white, non-college educated Americans put them back in play for Republicans, and we've seen Republicans become increasingly competitive here and across the broader Midwest region in states like Ohio, Indiana, Iowa, and Missouri, which went from Obama-era swing states to solidly Republican. So starting Michigan, one of just 2 states where DDHQ has confirmed Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s ballot access with the state's Secretary of State office, our current horse race average has Trump leading by only 2.3% based on 21 polls, with 40.8% to Biden's 38.5%. Kennedy Jr. is again drawing an average of 10.6%, the same level of support he currently has in Nevada. That said, in contrast to Nevada, Trump's lead actually increases to 3.3% when looking at the average of 40 polls assessing the head-to-head between Biden and Trump in Michigan. This suggests Biden is actually gaining about a point in margin in polls, including RFK as an independent. So that's hurting Trump more in Michigan right now than he is Biden. I should also note that this remained pretty consistent across the 21 polls we've tracked here in this average, whereas Trump's lead in Michigan has decreased sharply in recent weeks from around 4 points to this 2.3% margin we see right now. That 2.3% margin is just barely enough to place Michigan down as a lean Republican state. And now finally, we have Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, the 2 narrowest states in terms of current polling averages. Interestingly, they're actually directly inverse of each other. Trump leads Biden by 0.7% based on 25 polls in Wisconsin, yet trails Biden by 0.7% based upon 40 polls in Pennsylvania. Both averages have remained pretty consistent over the last few weeks, and both states will therefore remain as toss-ups on the electoral map with margins of less than 2% in either direction. So that wraps up these race ratings based on the DDHQ and The Hill polling averages, which you can check out at elections2024.thehill.com. Donald Trump continues to lead in the race to 270 with 283 electoral votes to Biden's only 226. Under our previous rating classifications, with Wisconsin going down as lean Republican and Pennsylvania as lean Democrat, Trump would be winning with 293 electoral votes to Biden's 245. Feel free to leave your thoughts, comments, and reactions in the comments below, and that is all for this Decision Desk HQ video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to click that like button down below if you did indeed like it, and subscribe to the channel down below if you haven't already. Also check out more content from our channel here, and I will catch you in 2 weeks.